Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Book Club. Today we are going to be reviewing The Boleyns, A Scandalous Family, the new documentary on BBC Two and iPlayer, and I have only so far watched the trailer for this. I'm about to watch the first episode of this show and then I'll give you my thoughts, and then I'll watch the second episode and give you my thoughts. But so far, from what I've seen in the trailer, it looks really good. Actors look really historically accurate. They have some really good historians on talking, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they cover the family. I want to see some stuff about Mary Boleyn. I'd love to see some stuff about the Howard connection, especially with the mother maybe having been somebody's mistress. I want to see how they cover that. And it looks pretty dramatic. I mean, in the trailer there's like Anne Boleyn dancing with fire and, you know, like let them grumble type thing. So let's see how it is. All the costumes look great and the settings look amazing. I think they filmed in Hever Castle. I've seen that in a little news article somewhere. So let us begin. I just went on to BBC iPlayer and it turns out there are 3 episodes of this documentary series instead of 2 like I thought. So that is brilliant, but I probably won't get them all watched today because I've got things to do. So I'll probably make this little review over 2 days. So let's get watching! Okay, so I just finished watching the first episode called Ambition, and I really liked it. It reminded me very much so of the David Starsky documentaries on Channel 4. It had the same sort of feel with the actors reading letters, you know, and you kind of got their own voices across, which was really good. This episode mainly focused on Thomas Boleyn and his rise to power and some of his background. There wasn't too much about Henry or Catherine. There was a lot about Thomas Wolsey and Thomas Howard, the 3 Thomases. It could get confusing. I really enjoyed finding out more about Thomas Boleyn and his career at court, especially when he became an ambassador to the Netherlands and France. Towards the end of this episode, we are introduced more so to Mary Boleyn. I thought we could have a little more of her, especially when it came to the French king, but you never know. I suppose you can't cram it all into 1 hour-long documentary. I also would have liked a little bit more about George Boleyn and maybe his education, and also their mother. I haven't seen really anything about their mother, Elizabeth Howard, and I would have liked to have seen that. The show looks beautiful though. There is some really great cinematography, and the way they worked out the spiral of the court, the way they explain that, and the graphics are beautiful, and the costumes, don't even get me started on how amazing the costumes are. They look very like the Tudors TV show. I mean, they're not overly historically accurate, but they look beautiful. That gown and hat combination in purple velvet Anne is wearing at one point, oh my god, I want that so much. And I'm really looking forward to watching the second episode. It's definitely going to get more in depth. I really hope we get a bit more of Mary and George Boleyn. I also hope we get a bit of Catherine of Aragon. We have not seen her in this at all yet, and I think she's going to be very pivotal, especially in the next episode. So I have just finished watching the second episode of The Boleyns, A Scandalous Family, and I was right and wrong. We do get a little bit more about Mary and George, but we don't get any Catherine of Aragon at all, and I thought that was really odd, especially when they left out her big speech in the court scene. I would have liked to have seen that. This episode mainly focused on Thomas Wolsey's fall and Anne's rise, which was to be expected, but we could have done with a little bit more depth. It is beautiful, and I think that makes up for a lot of the stuff they gloss over or they speed by. I think this documentary could have done with a few more characters. We don't get to see too much of Henry. It does mainly focus on the Boleyns, but we could have seen a few ambassadors. They mention foreign ambassadors all the time, but we don't get any of them by name, and I would have liked to seen a little bit of Eustace Chapuis. I also think Thomas Howard is brilliant in this. He steals the show. He is horrible and nasty and vile and brilliant. That actor, oh my god, he just embodies how ruthless and nasty Thomas Howard was. And I liked it in the first episode when Thomas Howard was once described as the nastiest man in Tudor England, and that is quite a feat, and I agree, he really was horrid. We also get these brilliant little 14th, 15th and 16th century proverbs that pop up, like, one cannot have one's cake and eat it, and if one maketh one's bed, one must lie upon it. And I really like that because we still use those in everyday speech, and to think that perhaps people in history used them too. I don't know, it makes me smile. I liked it. I think the third episode of this show is going to have to cover a lot though, because Anne hasn't even been crowned, they haven't gone to France, Anne isn't pregnant, and I think we're going to have to cover so much in the next episode, as well as her downfall, not just her ascent to glory, but also her downfall, that I think it's going to be very fast paced and we're not going to get much detail. So I'm wondering what the next episode is going to be. Of course it's going to look beautiful, but will it leave me feeling satisfied that I have heard the whole story? Hopefully. I think we might see a little bit of Anne's father and uncle judging her, which I think would be good. I think Wiltshire's role in Anne's downfall is a weird one, and I think people always cast him as a villain when really he was just out to save his own neck. I mean, you know, he didn't do the right thing, but can you really say he did the wrong thing either? And we'll wait and see. Hopefully going to watch the next episode tomorrow. Okay, so I just finished watching episode 3 of The Boleyns, A Scandalous Family, and it felt really rushed. I mean, they cover her pregnancy, her marriage, her coronation, and then her fall so quickly. And I just felt a little bit disappointed. They should have had a little bit more detail. They did cover the trip to France to meet the French king, and they covered Mary Boleyn's marriage and pregnancy, which I like. I like the fact Mary got a little bit more screen time, and they also kind of showed, not really showed, the rise of Thomas Cromwell, but there wasn't enough screen time. I mean, if you didn't know who he already was, you'd be like, who is this guy? They gave him like 5 minutes of, you know, this is who he was an MP who liked Wolsey, and then they didn't really cover how he came up with the plots or why he came up with the plots, or it was like them or him. They also only covered one of Anne's miscarriages, and I was like, okay, so you're doing that, that's fine. And they didn't do the bit where I thought we'd see Anne pick up Elizabeth and be like to Henry, this is your kid, like, Anne, what am I doing? I mean, we all know that's a really famous scene. I was also really disappointed we didn't get any Thomas Cranmer. I thought we would get a little because they talked about religious reform at the beginning of the episode, and I was like, okay, here he comes. And then nothing. And there was a little bit of Jane Seymour, but not enough. I thought they would tell the story about Henry giving her the money and her giving it back, but no. Philip Brodie, who plays Thomas Howard, really stole this entire show for me. He was so good. But I was annoyed they didn't mention Mary Howard, Thomas Howard's daughter, and her marriage to Henry's bastard son, Henry Fitzroy. I thought that would come into play. Like, that was a big power move on Anne Boleyn's part to get that marriage sorted, and that wasn't brought up. The costumes, of course, in this episode, like all the other episodes, were beautiful, and I love Anne Boleyn's hats. Like, oh my god, when she was wearing that blue hat, amazing. But there was no Henry, no Catherine, no Thomas Cranmer, no Bishop Fisher, no Princess Mary. They left so much out of this documentary. It really felt like an entry-level documentary. It didn't stand up against David Starkey documentaries or other even BBC documentaries that I've seen. I felt like they were trying to do too much in too little time. The historians were brilliant and they gave great evidence and it was put together beautifully. But they didn't include enough of the story, and we did need a little bit of Henry. We also needed a little bit of Catherine. We also could have had a bit of the Pope Clement stuff, or the war that went on that delayed the Pope's decision. None of that was covered. I did like the fact that they talked about Wiltshire, Anne's father saving his own skin at the end. I liked the fact they included that. I wondered about why they didn't say about whether or not he served on her court
did he sentence her? We all know Thomas Howard did, but there is evidence leaning either way to say whether Wiltshire was there or not. So I don't know. They could have talked about that. They didn't. They also said that Mary was reconciled to Wiltshire, and he left her nothing. I mean, he left everything he had to the king when he died. So I don't know why they put that in. I did like how they followed Mary Boleyn's family tree though, the whole way down to Elizabeth both Lyon, the Queen Mother, and Elizabeth II, so that was nice. But overall, I give this documentary a 6 out of 10. It was completely beautiful and the historians were amazing, but beauty and good historians cannot trump bad storytelling, and this documentary had a lot of bad storytelling and big holes. I mean, if you did not know this story, you would be a little bit confused. I mean, they covered 7 years in like an episode and a half. Not even. Anyway, if you liked this review, please subscribe to my channel. I review historical documentaries, historical TV show, historical fiction books. Got big series on Alison Weir if you're interested in that. So, like, comment and subscribe.